Hello everybody, and welcome to History Bite number 17, dated August the 24th, 2020. I'm Walter, your mobile historian and blue-collar scholar. This History Bite is entitled Black Loyalists and the Book of Negroes. As we talk more about subjects in early American history, an area you can clearly see that I love to talk about, today we discuss African Americans during the Revolutionary War, more specifically those known as Black Loyalists. So what were Black Loyalists? Well, Black Loyalists were people of African descent who lived in the American colonies that sided with the Loyalist cause during the American Revolution. They were mostly escaped slaves who had fled the service of their patriot masters and had joined the British Army with the promise of freedom by the Crown. Beginning with Lord Dunmore's proclamation in 1775 and extending all the way until the war's end in 1783, some 12,000 African Americans would serve in the British Army throughout the course of the war itself. They were, of course, not treated equally with their white counterparts, such as not being allowed to be promoted to the rank of officer. However, many did distinguish themselves in battle, including one man in particular named Colonel Ty. That title, of course, is honorary. Colonel Ty was a fierce fighter who struck lots of fear in the hearts of patriot soldiers. He was unfortunately killed in action, but his service was well noted and well documented by the British officers under whom he served. With the conclusion of the Revolutionary War in 1783, and much to the dismay of American slaveholders, the British were very adamant about keeping their promise to the Black Loyalists in granting them their freedom for their service. Black Loyalists needed to prove that they had served in the British Army, and I don't mean just by wearing a red coat uniform. They had to have actual documentation to prove under whom they served and their length of service. They had to have proof that they had served, okay? And almost all of them who could prove said service did in fact leave with the British when they departed New York in 1783. It was largely due to the efforts of Sir Guy Carleton that all of the Black Loyalists who could prove their service got on those ships and left with the British when they departed New York, okay? Sir Guy Carleton would not take no for an answer, refusing, the demands of the Americans that the British turn slaves back over to them, and that was not going to happen. He refused to renege on the Crown's promise of freedom to the Black Loyalists, and thanks to his efforts, almost all of them who could prove their service left with the British. Those unfortunates who could not prove their service, unfortunately, would be returned to service under their former patriot masters and would receive arguably numerous sorts of punishment, maybe even death, okay? At the very least, they would be returned to servitude, but many of these Black Loyalists who could not leave with the British would end up being executed as traitors to the patriot cause, unfortunately. But those who could prove their service and did leave with the British would ultimately be resettled in Canada, the Caribbean, West Africa, and in England itself. Speaking in particular to those who would be resettled in Canada, and even more specifically in Nova Scotia, General Samuel Birch documented the names of some 3,000 Black Loyalists, okay, as well as their descriptions, in a large text, 150 pages long, known as the Book of Negroes. There are many prominent names listed in this book, and all of these individuals who were documented in this book were settled in Nova Scotia, as I've said, and the locale in Nova Scotia, named Birchtown, was named for General Birch as such. All right. The descendants of these original Black Loyalists still live there to this day, as well as other parts of Canada, as well as those who went to England, West Africa, in the area now known as Sierra Leone, as well as in the Caribbean. You know, the descendants of all these originally American-born black people still live in these other locales to this very day. All right, their origins in what is now the United States. Okay, the Book of Negroes. There are two versions of it. One version is in the National Archives in London, you know, for the British version, and the other version, American, is in our National Archives in Washington, D.C. These documents are viewable for you to do historical research. So, in sum, the vast majority of black loyalists who served the crown during the American Revolution in uniform did receive their freedom as promised, okay? Only a very small amount, for whatever reason, could not prove their freedom, were forced to remain at the mercy of their former American masters. But the vast majority did receive their freedom, much to the credit of the efforts of Sir Guy Carleton. Okay? So, I thank you very much for listening to this History Bite. I hope you learned a thing or two from it. And as we continue to talk about early America, I hope to further expand your minds on these somewhat esoteric subjects. I'll talk to you at the next one. Have a great day.